Welcome to This Explainer. Today, we're diving into a profoundly eye-opening concept from the world of relationship psychology. We're looking at this realization that a relationship's emotional distance, well, it often isn't about a lack of love. It's actually about good, well-meaning men operating completely without a map. If you've ever felt this growing gap between you and your partner, despite your absolute best efforts, this breakdown of the emotional touch map is going to completely change how you look at physical connection. Invisible, not unloved. Wow, that is exactly how so many partners feel. You know, a lot of men feel deeply frustrated because they truly believe they're doing all the right things to show their affection. They're smart, they genuinely love their partners, and yet, they're completely unaware that there are specific physical gateways that unlock a partner emotionally. They're missing the mark, not because they don't care, but because nobody ever taught them the crucial difference between an action that just says "I love you" and a touch that makes a woman feel truly seen. And I want to be super clear right out of the gate. This isn't just some random internet theory or locker room advice. This map was built on 20 years of clinical experience. 2 decades! It was discovered by sitting right across from real couples in real pain, couples on the edge of divorce, or folks just trying to reconnect after years of silence. So the patterns we're about to unpack? They are grounded in decades of solid psychological observation.
We've got a great roadmap for today. We'll cover 5 parts. First, the intimacy disconnect. Then, the neuroscience of emotional touch. Third, the everyday anchors. Fourth, the vulnerability zones. And finally, number 5, the power of intention.
All right, let's kick things off with part 1, the intimacy disconnect. Let's really unpack why so many smart, loving men are completely missing the mark when they try to connect.
Think about the stark contrast between a transactional approach to touch and what actually works in the real world. On one side, you have physical stimulation. On the other, emotional safety. Our source material points out that most men are operating on that physical side. They're treating touch like a transaction. But what actually signals to a woman's nervous system, her psychology, her very soul, that she is deeply safe and seen? That operates entirely on the emotional side. It's all about establishing safety first and foremost. Moving on to part 2, the neuroscience of emotional touch. To really get why this shift from physical stimulation to emotional safety is so critical, we have to look right past the romance and focus on the hard neurobiology happening just beneath the skin.
Enter oxytocin. This is the bonding hormone. It is literally the "I'm completely safe with you" chemical. According to the affective neuroscience cited in our source, female skin receptors are actually significantly more sensitive and emotionally integrated than men's. Because of this biological reality, a slow, intentional touch triggers a measurably higher release of oxytocin. You aren't just giving a back rub, you are fundamentally altering her brain chemistry. You're shifting her entire nervous system from survival mode straight into connection mode.
Which brings us to part 3, the everyday anchors. Let's start mapping the first 3 of our 7 emotional zones. We can group these together as everyday anchors because they ground the relationship in ordinary daily moments.
Okay, here's where the map gets incredibly specific. First up, the hands. Now, we aren't talking about a quick grip while crossing a busy street. We mean holding a hand with true, slow intention to really release that oxytocin. Next is the nape of the neck, right at the hairline. This is the exact spot where women carry the mental load and accumulated stress of the day. A gentle touch here, it shifts her right out of that high-stress survival mode. Finally, the lower back. Simply resting a hand between the waist and hips in a totally ordinary moment, say on a Tuesday morning, communicates unconditional presence. It quietly says, "I'm here and I've got you," without any restraint or possession. Building consistency in these 3 everyday anchors is absolutely vital.
This dynamic is perfectly captured by a clinical anecdote from our source. Picture this. A man in his late 50s felt like a total stranger in his own marriage. One evening, for absolutely no special occasion, he simply placed his hand on the back of his wife's neck while she stood looking out the window. The response was immediate, and it was profound. He didn't even say a single word. It just proves that safe, intentional touch says what words rarely manage to communicate.
Let's transition to part 4, the vulnerability zones. We're going to see how this builds as we enter areas of the body that require trust to already be established before you even approach them.
Notice how the psychological stakes really ramp up with these next 4 zones. Touching behind the ear makes her feel treasured, which, for a mature woman who has learned to protect herself, comes before absolutely everything else.
The space between the shoulder blades, that's about providing unseen protection over a blind spot she physically cannot see herself. Then there's the inner thigh near the knee. This is a transitional zone. Lingering here with patience communicates that you respect her boundaries and her pace. Zero rushing. Finally, the lower abdomen. Listen, you do not approach this casually. Touching this area with warmth and care honors her inner world with incredible patience. It signifies enormous, fragile trust.
So, there it is. The complete 7-zone map provides an incredibly clear physical blueprint. But, and this is a massive but, memorizing these physical locations alone will absolutely not fix the intimacy disconnect. If you just treat this like a map of buttons to push, like some sort of video game cheat code, you are still operating on the wrong side of that first equation we looked at.
Which leads us perfectly into part 5, the power of intention. Because honestly, the physical locations we've mapped out are absolutely useless without the right vehicle driving the interaction. One patient perfectly captured the magic ingredient here, saying, "I don't even know what I changed. I just started paying attention differently, and suddenly she was closer." That's the secret. Women respond to genuine, conscious presence. They do not respond to stimulation alone. They need to feel that the man standing in front of them is actually there, paying attention differently. Believe me, they can absolutely tell the difference between someone who is genuinely, fully conscious in the moment and someone who is just performing affection or going through the motions to get a result.
I absolutely love how the source frames this. These 7 zones are doors, not buttons. You cannot approach this like a checklist to press for a reaction. Doing that ruins the safety completely. Instead, every sincere, slow touch with no agenda beyond pure connection is a way of saying, "I see you, you are safe, and you matter to me." That lack of an agenda, that is the key that unlocks the door. As we wrap up this explainer, the research and the clinical evidence are crystal clear. Just one conscious touch in an ordinary moment can reopen a chapter in a relationship that you might have thought was closed forever. It is never, ever too late to start. The map has been laid out, the neurobiology explained, and the psychology decoded. The only thing left to decide is how you're going to put this map into practice. So the question is, will you show up differently tonight?